All right, we're all set. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Governance Committee meeting of the CCIDA, CREDC, and CRC. We're at the BWB Building, 201 West 3rd Street, Jamestown, New York. So streaming via YouTube and Zoom. It's August 22nd at 9:35 in the morning. We'll do a roll call. Attendance, Gary Henry's here and Hetzenreiter here. Thank you for being here this morning. You should have already received the meeting from the December 27th, 2022 meeting. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The meeting minutes have been approved. And then we'll move right into new business presented by Julie. Mark, did you want to say something?
Yeah, real quick. So in response to the ABO's review of the IDA, there was a number of policies that they pointed out that needed to be amended. Certain other policies that we needed to approve that we didn't have in place. So we've been working with Harris Speech. Julie Marshall has joined us for upwards of 6 months on drafting the new policies and amending the other ones. And we have those policies here. Just to give you an idea, overall, there are 14 new policies. And some of those, by the way, the ABO didn't point to, but there are certain policies, and we'll talk about them in a minute, that the state is requiring that we have in place in order to accept state funding, grant funding. So there are a few policies that they require and certain other ones that the ABO requires. For the governance committee, we have 10 new policies, one amended and restated policy, and 5 other policies that have just been amended. And so we'll talk through those. Julie's going to take the lead, and then as she goes through, I'll try to point out which ones are the state ones as well. And then there's still a couple of other ones that we need to do for the state. And we'll try to do those in September that aren't on here. But we'll make sure that we get those to you in the coming days so you can review those prior to next month's meeting. And I think what we'll do is we'll meet again next month at 9 o'clock again to go through for a final time the policies, make sure everyone's good with them before we take them to the board at next month's board meeting. So with that, Julie, I don't know if you wanted to start out with the procurement policy. I don't think there's a whole lot to say there because it was just amended.
Yeah, I guess actually, Mark, I'd like to start with the charter, the committee charter.
Okay.
So this is new. This is something that is required. The charter basically sets forth the composition of the committee and the responsibilities of the committee, which is just basically to make sure that the agencies, and I say that collectively, which is the IDA, CREDC, and the CRC, are operating with the best governance practices and principles in compliance with the respective statutes. So really, that's all that this says. This is new, as I said, and the committee is unlike the the audit and finance committee, which was really 2 committees combined to one, which is allowable. This is governance, and it's a standalone committee. So I don't have anything further unless you've got questions.
Happy with that?
Yeah, it's back though. If you look at
It's not an order.
they're not really out of order. It starts with those first 5: procurement, then there's real property,
Yeah,
whistleblower, travel, code of ethics, freedom of information, right?
I think that the committee charter was listed under the new policies.
Yeah.
I see it. I just missed it.
I guess I like to do it because it's kind of the umbrella that's, it kind of sets the table for the purpose.
Order first.
Yep, right. No, it was in order. We were,
Yeah.
that's good. Thank you.
Sorry, threw you a curve. Okay.
Yep.
So now I think we can take a look at the procurement policy. This is an amended and restated. This simply means we've reviewed it. There were probably some very minor tweaks. We did not make any changes to or recommend any changes to the procurement limits as far as the dollar amounts under which different types of procurement occur. So you still, are maintaining some of that ability to make some quick and nimble decisions on lower amount purchases. Questions, comments?
Okay.
The professional services contract, the exemptions, that all that still needs to be reported in Paris.
Correct.
And what box do you check there on what type of procurement? Professional, offhand, if not, we can.
I think
Is
we
that
do
number-
it. We do it as an agency contract, I think is the box that you
Okay,
check.
all right, thank you.
And it would, but Rich, it would only be for those that are $5,000 or more.
Yes, and that's most of them these days.
Okay,
Yeah.
didn't used to be.
Right, Nate? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, which is good. I mean, you're dealing with big grants, you need, gotta spend money to make money, so, yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes for like the smaller, like maybe for CREDC or maybe for the CRC, your audits may fall in less than 5,000. Just generally, if there's, less activity, the audit isn't as much, but nonetheless, anything.
Yeah,
5,000 or more.
in that case, so we would have the same auditor and just allocate the cost based on the dollars, so.
Okay, all right.
One
makes sense.
procurement.
Yep. Okay, got it. Okay, the next is the real property disposition policy. Again, I don't think that we made any substantive changes to this. We just did a review and made sure that everything was consistent with what it needed to be. Again, whistleblower, the same thing. These are required policies, and so you are now complying in that they're all in place.
Julie, can we talk about disposition for just a second, though?
Sure. Yep.
So, we would need to leasing our property, leasing our space at the IDA to other entities would fall under this policy. We would need to justify why, fair market value is what we're paying. We consider that fair market value. And if we're doing less, we would justify that. And then we need to notify the ABO 90 days before we sign that lease, or do we sign it and then notify them, or how would you recommend we move forward with that?
I'm going to ask Bob to answer that question. I don't want to give you bad advice.
Okay.
He's
All
the
right.
attorney, I'm not. I want to make sure that you do it in the correct order, so we'll ask him.
Okay. Yeah. That's creeping up here. Month and a half, we'll have to do this. Oh, okay.
Because again, then your 90 days I know is drawing near
Yep.
for year end, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Your whistleblower policy, again, this is required, and I don't think we made, again, any major changes to any of this. It was consistent with what it needed to say. Okay.
Right.
Travel, conference, meals, and entertainment policy. I think we cleaned this up as far as what expenses can be charged back to the agencies. So in particular, I know Bob cleaned up on page 4 and 5 use of agency funds for different types of employee activities. So we're going to try to include now a component for education and training.
Yeah, one question I had on that one, on page 5, and it said entertainment expenses not reimbursed. The second bullet point there, it says excluding morale building expenses referenced in section 4.1 above. So, but it should actually be maybe section 4.0.
Yeah.
Because that would be above, but I wasn't, I didn't see anything up there that said anything specifically about morale building expenses. I just wasn't sure.
No, that's a great catch, Gary. So prior 4.1 was employee morale building activities. So we changed that. We modified that. So I'll get this cleaned up before your next meeting in September to make sure that it says what it needs to. Thank you.
Yep.
Good catch.
Yeah, that's a great catch.
Mhm.
I think we read these so much that we kind of get a little blurry, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, the next one I have is Code of Ethics and Conflict of Interest. Again, I don't know that we made any significant, if any, changes to this. It's kind of an amended and reviewed and restated. You know, what's a conflict of interest, and what would cause someone to need to recuse themselves?
And by the way, this is one of the ones that the state requires that we have in place.
Yep,
I'm just gonna call that out. As well as the ABO.
the next one that I have on my list is the Freedom of Information Law policy, and this just states how someone can file a Freedom of Information request of any of the three entities, the process, who the officer, the records access officer is, and if records should be denied, the appeal process. Okay. Let's see. So those are all of your existing policies that we amended in some form or fashion. Again, no real big significant changes though. Okay.
Yep.
Next are all the new ones. As Mark stated, many of these are required either by statute or the ABO requires, or you may need them to receive state funding. So that's why these were developed. The real property acquisition policy is a new one. It just states the conditions under which and the procedure for acquiring any new property, real property. Okay.
Is that in the packet?
Yes,
Yes,
it's
after
after
the charter.
Carter. They're all in order.
Just the one sheet.
It's,
Yep, it's
yeah,
one page. Oh, you got them all out of order. Oh, no. They're done.
Always in one.
Well,
That's all right.
okay.
I got it. Thank you.
are we good? The next one I have is procedures for video conferencing participation. This was a big one during the COVID pandemic, and a lot of our clients established this policy, and many dissolved the policy, or took the policy back after things kind of calmed down after the pandemic. However, we have seen that in some situations, if someone is ill and wants to participate in the meeting, they can't vote, but they can still comment and hear the meeting and participate in the meeting. It's just that their vote doesn't count towards quorum. Bob gave a great example. One of his clients, he is a board member that has a significant illness and really can't be around other people, but still wanted to fully participate in the meetings. And so they adopted this policy thinking they were not going to need to use it. And it has come into play sooner than they ever anticipated that it would. So we've added this kind of as a good governance policy. We good on that one? No questions? The next one that I have is a sexual harassment prevention policy. This is a state required policy. Anybody that has employees has to have this policy in place. And the language that's in here is consistent with the state policy. So we haven't made any changes to anything on this. Okay. Project recapture, termination, and modification policy. This is a new one. This is, again, good governance to have this so that if you have projects that run into any issues and we need to modify the terms of their agreements or recapture due to lack of performance or any other situation, we have a policy in place that describes how that happens and what the triggers are. Okay. And then the next one that I have is a uniform project evaluation policy. Again, this is a good governance, kind of a best practice policy. So that when you review, projects that are seeking assistance, this is the process you follow. And then the next one that I have, defense and indemnification. Again, this is consistent with public.
Do you have
authority.
I'm sorry, do you have the anti-nepotism policy?
Did I
That's the
skip
next one
that?
we have
I'm
in our
sorry.
That's the
I'm
next one
sorry.
we have in our packet.
You do. Anti-nepotism. This one is a new one.
State.
This is required, if you were to receive any state funding. The state requires this anti-nepotism policy that just says, you know, basically you're not going to be supervising any of your family members. Okay.
Can't be your boss.
Yep.
Defense and indemnification. This is a new policy and this is required under public authorities law and covers all three entities. The diversity policy, I believe, is also one that's required for any state funds that you should receive. So this is a new policy. And again, it just states that you're going to, you know, ensure that you give, you know, any available talent the opportunity to provide services to the agencies. And then
And I would say for this last one, let's not, we're not gonna, we had talked about an MWBE policy. However, it's because we thought it was required by the state for the IDA to adopt it, but it isn't. It basically says that in order for us to receive money, we have to follow the state's MWBE policy. So we're gonna have more conversation about that to make sure on that. And so, but there is that in your package, just so you know, but you know, we'll revisit that.
right, that's something we can revisit at the September meeting.
Yep.
Yep. So that's all I have as far as charters and policies related to the agency and its entities. So happy to take questions or comments, but if you have any other questions, let us know, or you find any other things like Gary did, you know, shoot us a note or let staff know and they'll get back to us. That was fast. I'm sorry.
That was great.
Well, thank you. That's a lot of work. We appreciate all your help.
Sure.
Yeah,
we
you
want to
guys
make
have
sure
done
you're
great.
compliant.
Yep.
And then Mark, I don't know if you wanted to mention the only one we're missing in addition.
Oh, yeah.
Number is the revision and performance evaluation.
Yep. Oh, yeah. The other one is the accounting policy. I have a question, and this is going back to the audit and finance, and I apologize for that. But I wasn't sure if the accounting policy is the same as the fiscal internal controls policy that the state requires. If they are the same thing, then maybe we just need to think about the nomenclature on them.
I think that they can be, and I've seen them that way because they basically cover the same,
Right.
you know, process of how you handle when a bill comes in and how you, you
Yeah.
know, match it up. And so we can look at that and maybe make it, you know, one and the same. I don't
Yeah,
see.
yeah. So I think that, and then the other one is like Nate said, the supervision and performance evaluation policy. Julie, I'd sent an email yesterday about that.
Yeah,
Questioning whether we needed that. I think we do. So I think we need to draft that up as well.
we'll do that
Supervision
first.
and performance
September.
evaluation policy. And that would be under governance, I would think. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, obviously we didn't have significant time to get those pulled together, but
Right.
we definitely will have those for September.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other?
Dan, did you have any questions or anything you wanted to discuss?
No, I appreciate, I guess, just curious about our process. So it sounds like we're gonna sort of forward these to the full board for September with the changes and additional policies that might be developed. So are we gonna meet again in September, or do we need sort of a motion to forward these to the board?
No, I say that we, and I don't think it's a good idea to meet just prior to the next board meeting. I think that's too late. I'd love to have a meeting in the next couple of weeks, maybe,
Sure.
where we nail them down and then send them out to the full board. So that they have, you know, a week or two to review them prior to the board meeting.
Yeah.
Does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, as opposed to waiting until
Yeah.
an hour before the board.
Right.
Sounds good.
Great. Well, if there's no other further questions, we'll go ahead and close the governance committee meeting for the CCIDA, CREDC and CRC. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.